I'm sure you got bored in class one day and started typing random numbers and symbols to see how long it would take for your calculator to figure out the answer. And you'd always get the answer within just a second and wondered, how? Calculators have been with us for over 378 years. The first real calculator was invented in 1642 by a French inventor and mathematician called
Blaise Pascal.
His calculator could add and subtract two numbers directly and thus multiply and divide by repetition. But it was a tedious process. So thanks to this guy, solving math problems has never been easier. Although, a German professor of Hebrew and astronomy called
Wilhelm Schickhardt
is said to be the original creator of calculators, because unknown letters which were written in 1623 and 1624 by Wilhelm were later discovered, which had the drawings of a calculating clock, and these letters predated the public release of Pascal's calculator by 20 years. His calculator used a clever set of mechanized multiplication tables to ease the process of multiplication and division. But after careful examination, it was found that Wilhelm's drawings had been published at least once per century, starting from 1718, and that his machine was not complete and required additional wheels and springs. So who's the true inventor of the calculator? We may never know. Around 52 years later, on 1694, a prominent German polymath and one of the most important logicians, mathematicians, and natural philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment called
Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz
spent 40 years designing a 4-operation mechanical calculator called
the Stepped Reckoner. Staffelwalze.
It was the first calculator that could perform all 4 arithmetic operations, meaning it could add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But it wasn't complete. He only built a prototype. But what he did complete in the process was the
Leibniz wheel.
It can be used in mechanical calculators, and it was used for 3 centuries, until the introduction of electronic calculators in the mid-1970s. But nevertheless, his calculator was a stepping stone for other scientists to invent better calculators. But it was not until the 19th century and the Industrial Revolution that real developments began to occur. The refinement of manufacturing and fabrication processes during the Industrial Revolution made large-scale production of more compact and modern units possible.
Arithmometer
Invented in 1820 by a French inventor and entrepreneur called
Charles-Xavier Thomas de Colmar
as a 4-operation mechanical calculator, was released to produce in 1851 as an adding machine and became the first commercially successful unit that sold about 2,500 units by 1890. Calculators have drastically evolved throughout the centuries. We went from mechanical calculators to electronic calculators in the span of about 400 years. But we'll be focusing on the present-day electronic calculators. If you ever opened your calculator, you'll see that it has a very simple circuit board, a display, a small solar panel if your calculator has one, a small battery, and a keypad. The main circuit board contains a processor which does all the calculations for you. Let me explain how a simple calculator works. When you type a number on the keypad, the keyboard sensors tell the processor on which keys you pressed. The processor then shows you the number through the display. After you finish pressing your first set of numbers, as soon as you press a different symbol like plus, minus, multiply, divide, etc., the numbers that you pressed before get stored in the memory, and then you press on a different set of numbers, and as soon as you press on equals, you get your result. So how do you get your result so fast? See, we humans count in decimal numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but machines don't understand this method. Machines only understand on and off, which is known as 1 and 0. So the calculator has to convert these decimal numbers into binary numbers, which is 1 and 0, so that the calculator can understand and process what you typed. But here is the kicker. Every single electronic device in the world can only do additions. It can't subtract, multiply, divide, or anything else. Every electronic device only relies on additions to do other operations. For example, 10 plus 5 equals 15. That the calculator can do. But when it is asked to subtract 5 from 10, then it adds minus 5. When it is asked to multiply 10 with 5, then it adds 10 5 times. And here is where logic gates come in. Don't click away yet, I'll try to explain this as simply as possible. So the circuit of a calculator has many transistors. Transistors are basically small switches that turn on or off depending on the input that it receives, which is basically 1 and 0. So whenever it receives an input, it processes it and gives an output which you can see on the display. And whatever happens in the circuit board happens in binary, and then it converts it to decimal and shows it on the display. Calculator display's use was called a 7-segment display. This display can show whatever number, alphabet, or symbol it wants. There are 7 segments, and depending on what number, alphabet, or symbol it needs to show, it turns on or off different parts of that segment. I just explained how a basic electronic calculator works. There are more advanced calculators like scientific calculators and graphical calculators, but those are far more complex than what my brain can understand. But if you like this video, then I'll try making a video about the more advanced calculators and explain how those work. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. If you did like this video, then leave a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on all other social media platforms at TechBudgie.